Today, we're digging into a pretty heavy critique of the brand new DC Universe. We're going to look at claims of some serious trouble brewing behind the scenes and what some are calling a controversial pattern that keeps popping up in all their new movies and shows. So let's just get right to it. Is the new DC Universe already in trouble? I mean, that's the big question, right? And it's exactly what a deep dive analysis from the YouTube channel Nerdrotic Daily is asking. Their whole argument is that the issues people are starting to notice, they're not just little bumps in the road. No, they're saying it's a sign of something much deeper going on. All right, so to really build their case, the source kind of zooms in on one specific project that they say is a perfect example of this chaos, and that's the upcoming Supergirl movie. And to really drive the point home, they focus on a single number, 3. You're probably wondering, 3 what? Well, that's supposedly how many composers the Supergirl movie has burned through already. And get this, the movie is just months away from release. The critique argues this is a huge red flag. I mean, think about it. For a superhero movie, the score is everything. It's iconic. So when you see this kind of mess, it naturally makes you start to ask some much bigger questions. Okay, so starting with that production mess, the critique then pulls back a bit. It goes from a specific movie to the bigger picture, the leadership. And they put the spotlight squarely on one person, DCU co-head James Gunn. Now this is where it gets really interesting. The source points to a very specific event. Apparently, James Gunn was a no-show at the first really big meeting with the new leadership at Warner Bros. Discovery. Now, he was in Atlanta, supposedly prepping for his Superman movie, but the source is basically asking, hey, why would the co-head of the entire studio miss that meeting? You know, a meeting that's all about the future of the company? It definitely raises an eyebrow. And then there's this. The source brings up a quote from the Saturn Awards. It's from James Gunn's wife, Jennifer Holland, who is accepting an award for Peacemaker on his behalf. The way the critique sees it, her comments are a pretty big clue that maybe, just maybe, Gunn's real passion is for his own pet projects, not necessarily for the entire DC universe he's supposed to be running. Okay, and all of this, the production trouble, the leadership questions, it brings us right to the absolute heart of the source's argument. They're basically saying these aren't just random problems. No, they're symptoms of something bigger, a deliberate creative choice that's shaping the whole DCU under Gunn. So the source just comes right out and asks it, a really direct question. They claim that if you actually look closely at all the announced projects for the DCU, you start to see let's call it a recurring political theme, especially when it comes to the villains. So let's look at the evidence they present. First up is the new animated series, Creature Commandos. According to the source, the bad guys in this show, they're not your typical run-of-the-mill villains. Nope. They are specifically described using some very modern, very politically loaded terms, like incels and gun-toting rednecks. All right, next up. The analysis dives into what's supposed to be the cornerstone of this whole new universe, Gunn's very own Superman movie. Now, this is where the source makes a really bold, maybe even provocative claim. They argue that Lex Luthor's evil plan in the movie isn't just some random supervillain plot. They're saying it's a direct allegory for what happened to James Gunn himself. You know, when he was fired by Disney after his old, controversial jokes were brought back up online by right-leaning figures. A direct parallel. And, as you might have guessed, the source claims this pattern is on full display, maybe the most obvious in the show they call Gunn's favorite child, which is Peacemaker. So according to this critique, there's no ambiguity here at all. The villains are just straight-up right-wing caricatures. The source goes so far as to describe the show's whole theme as a really direct, really aggressive message against one particular side of American politics. But okay, the critique doesn't just stick to stuff that's already out. It also looks to the future, pointing to what it says are leaks and rumors about where the next batch of movies and shows are headed. And this table really lays it all out, right? It sums up their whole argument about what's coming next. Based on supposed leaks from test screenings and other rumors, the source is betting that the villains in both Supergirl and the new Lantern series, they're going to follow this exact same pattern. So when you see all this laid out, it leads to one big fundamental question. Why? I mean, what's the motivation for this alleged pattern? Why is this theme showing up over and over again? Well, the source suggests the answer is something very, very personal. Here's the theory. The source claims this isn't just a creative direction, it's a personal vendetta. They're suggesting that James Gunn is essentially using the entire DC universe as his personal canvas to, quote, work things out, specifically his anger about being temporarily fired by Disney. You know, an event that he reportedly blames on those same right-wing online figures. And this is the central contradiction that the source really hammers home. On one hand, you have James Gunn's public statements saying his movies are for everybody and that he's not here to judge. But on the other hand, the source claims his actual screenwriting, the stories he's telling, well, they tell a very different and much more personal story. So, what does this all add up to? What's the bottom line here? According to this critique, what happens when you build a whole cinematic universe on a foundation like this? What's the ultimate result? And this quote really says it all. It's the final verdict from the source. Their argument is that by making the villains so specific to the political fights happening right now, the entire DCU is running a huge risk, the risk of becoming instantly dated. You know, instead of being a timeless collection of stories, it just becomes a relic of our specific era. And all of this really leaves us with one last big question to think about, a question that this whole critique brings up. When you're a creator and you're handling these massive, iconic characters that the whole world knows and loves, where do you draw the line? What's the balance between putting your own personal story into the work and telling a story that's truly universal, one that's going to last forever?